Hey guys, it's been a minute, and I do want to apologize for not really talking to you guys at all. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Just so you know, I do have another project in the works. It is related to this one. You could call it a companion piece of sort, but I am getting off topic. For those who aren't following me on Twitter, at KeyBladeAlk, you should totally follow me there. I am a massive fan of the Castlevania series. Long story short, it was always something I appreciated from afar like other franchises, but finally got on board after watching Some Call Me Johnny's videos on it and season 1 of the Netflix series. I haven't gotten off this bitch, nor do I plan to. The lore, the atmosphere, the music, the gameplay, it's all a little addicting to me. And everyone knows games like Castlevania 1, Simon's Quest, Super Castlevania 4, and good old Symphony of the Night. But it is always fun to find the hidden gems like a Kid Dracula or a Harmony of Dissonance. These are the kind of games that I really like about collections. Look, I know Dissonance is one of those 3 major titles in the Advanced Collection, but when you think about GBA Castlevania, the first thing you probably comes to mind is Aria of Sorrow, and you are certainly not thinking about the definition of okay, that is Circle of the Moon. Anyway, enter the Dominus Collection, the latest collection of Castlevania games, and the one that Konami has actually decided to do a bit of marketing with the G Fuel collab. And also, of course, they decide to sneak the collection announcement at a Nintendo Partner Showcase. Not even a real direct, a partner showcase at 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday while I was watching the Dokkan Now for part 1 of the Worldwide Celebration. Never change, Konami. Obviously, the main attraction of the Dominus Collection are the 3 Castlevania games that came out on the Nintendo DS. That being Order of Ecclesia, Portrait of Ruin, and Dawn of Sorrow. While the DS games are, of course, like I said, the stars, there is one game that not a lot of people are talking about, and it is a true definition of a hidden gem. I introduce to you Haunted Castle Revisited. This is a ground-up remake of the 1988 arcade game, which by the way is also included in the Dominus Collection. And this is by nature an arcade game of Castlevania 1, and is definitely an arcade game from the 80s. I will say that. Revisited is developed by M2, who are mainly known for being really damn good at porting over titles to modern hardware. For reference, look at Legend of Mana Remastered, anything in the Sega Ages lineup, Mega Man X Legacy Collection, and basically every other modern collection put out by Konami. Like I said, this is a remake of the original Haunted Castle, which was the first time you could really say a retelling of Castlevania 1. By that, I mean you're Simon Belmont, fighting across different levels, killing classic monsters, all in the name of defeating Dracula. There are other retellings of Castlevania 1 out there, including the aforementioned Super Castlevania 4, and a remake in 1993 for the Japan-only Sharp X68000 home computer, which was then re-released and remastered for the PS1 in 2000 called Castlevania Chronicles. And incoming potential hot take, so bear with me, but I think Haunted Castle Revisited is the absolute best way to experience the story of Castlevania 1. I mean, the original NES release is what started the franchise and is a good game for its time. I personally think it's a tad overrated, but a lot of people love Super Castlevania 4, and you could probably find something out of Castlevania Chronicles. With Haunted Castle Revisited, it feels like the people at M2 saw the project of remaking a game that really no one gives a shit about, and as a way to show what they're really capable of and decided to fire on all cylinders. I see the passion M2 put into this game that lasts for not even an hour, and I think not only is it a great time, but also a game that to me is right behind Rondo of Blood as the best classic style game in the franchise. For those that know how much I love Rondo, that should show how high of a regard I have for this game. It runs smooth as butter, the music is incredible, it plays great, it looks amazing, and there's modern quality of life changes that bring it all together. Let me break it down to you stage by stage to try and explain what I mean. The game starts off with an opening cutscene of legendary protagonist Simon Belmont leaving the wedding chapel with his new wife Selena. As described by the original Haunted Castle, the couple were enveloped with happiness. As the wedding bells rang, their future seemed blessed. Suddenly, the empty sky was covered with dark clouds and with a rolling thunder that shook the earth. Dracula has once again awakened, asking for the beautiful girl's blood. He flew down during the middle of the wedding and suddenly took the bride with him. Now, in order to save Selena, Simon heads to the demon castle. With that, the game officially begins with stage 1, Graveyard, but the cool stage name actually being Crush Your Heart, which leads me to the first thing I really want to call out about this game, the music. Well, yes, the title screen and opening cutscene sounds good. The soundtrack doesn't hit until you enter stage 1 and you're slapped in the face by this rendition of Crush Your Heart. The entire game is composed by Jalen Chibitek Nisperos, who actually, just by sheer chance, had a small interaction with on Twitter when I first beat Revisited. Her take on every track in this game will be something I might gush about throughout this entire video, so I apologize in advance. And if Chibi, by sheer chance, you run into this video, just know you and everyone at M2 are doing great, and I hope you keep it up because you are bound for amazing things. The level itself feels like a more traditional Castlevania opening stage. Your main enemies are skeletons and zombies. It's a more grassy / foresty area, which, I mean, to be fair, it's a graveyard, so that checks out. And while it's very possible to get hit, it's just the right difficulty for a first level. This is also a great time to explain a couple of things regarding to how this game works. First and foremost, let's focus on the HUD. You have the health bars for both you and the boss on the very bottom, along with a meter for when the whip is fully charged. Moving up top, you have your score. Yes, it does save your high score at the end because it is an arcade game in nature. Right next to that, you have your life counter, your sub-weapon slot, along with your hearts that act as your resource for using sub-weapons, and because it is an arcade game, a timer. Don't worry about the timer. I'm sure as long as you aren't intentionally throwing, you won't run out of time. Focusing on Simon himself, he plays exactly like a traditional classic style Belmont would. He's got the iconic strut. He's got that kind of slow movement a Belmont typically does, except for the fact I genuinely can't tell if his ability to jump is slightly worse here or I'm just crazy. And great news, the infamous Belmont knockback seems pretty nerfed here. All in all, I think Simon feels great here. He isn't doing things like, say, Richter can, but he is still fun to handle. Let's actually circle back to the sub-weapons for just a quick moment. They're here and they act like how they normally do, but they aren't truly the same sub-weapons you come to expect. For example, the axe is here in all its glory and does exactly what you expect the axe to do. But we now have a torch that acts as our holy water, a boomerang that acts as your cross. The cross is now a screen nuke like the rosemary typically is, except for the fact this isn't a one and done. The Bible is just non-existent here, and we have the dagger still here, I guess. What's extremely weird is the fact that besides like 1 or 2 times I didn't use sub-weapons at all. I actually had to record an entire separate playthrough just so I can know for sure I had footage of them. I guess that may be a good thing in hindsight because that means the vampire killer was suitable enough of a weapon that I didn't feel like using anything, say the axe. But it just feels so weird to me to not use them, because I'll be playing other Castlevania games and I'll be more than willing to just go
God, I love item crashes.
After we pass the bridge, we want to cross our first boss, Medusa. She is an incredibly simple fight. She'll send snakes towards you, she can scratch you, and sends her tail your way. Something this game does really well, and what I think should always be an industry standard, just because it's simply game design 101, is that she has easy indicators for what she's about to do. I do want to give a quick compliment to is that Medusa's design seems more creepy than her other appearances. Instead of like being, oh, it's just Medusa. This design to me, again, just gives me more of a feeling that I'm fighting the creature of Greek mythology. I also love how when you kill Medusa, she doesn't disappear like she normally does. She actually turns to stone, which I think is just one of those small details that helps this game stand out. Overall, it's not a fight worth writing home about, but I think it does a fine job being your first encounter with Dracula's Legion. After we kill Medusa, we move on to stage 2, the cave. Speaking of 2s, there's 2 things that I want to point out that I think is insanely cool and a great decision by M2. First is the map icon for the stage you're entering. The map icon for the stage you're entering is actually the boss for that level. For example, the icon for stage 6 is Dracula, and for stage 2 it's the skeleton snake, which I actually just found out while writing the script for this video is that its origins come from Aztec mythology. The second thing I want to mention before diving diving into stage 2 is that every, I guess, subname for the actual stage is the song that's playing in the background. Like for stage 2, both the subname and track are called Lullaby of the Devils, and I think that's a great idea, because most Castlevania tracks have insanely cool names anyway, so that might as well give them the attention they deserve. Stage 2 starts off with us slowly approaching this iteration of Dracula's castle, as you can see it in the background as we fight our way past bats and skeletons. These skeletons have the added bonus of, once initially defeated, their spirit will actually hone in on your location before they launch at you. It's a nice added layer of positioning on your end, but man, it can be annoying. Once we actually go into the cave itself, we are introduced for the first time in this game to mermen. And to be honest, compared to how they are in, say, Rondo, the mermen are pretty harmless. The cave is also the first possible time in this game to learn about probably one of the biggest quality of life updates I have ever seen in a classic Vania. Just the sheer fact that falling in a pit does not mean instant death. All that happens when you fall in a pit is that you go back to where you last were, have a little bit of invincibility frames, and take around 3 points of damage. Now, if you have less than 3, then yes, you are dead and you're going back to the beginning of that area. I love this update, and I know hindsight is, I guess, 2024 in this case, but man! I wish we had it sooner. The cave also introduces a rock dragon that basically acts as the stand-in for how the skeleton dragons in most other games operate, except when you beat them, it actually turns into a case of serious for you. The last thing that stage 2 brings to the table is rotating skull platforms that don't come into play until the actual white dragon fight itself, which, I'll be honest, there's not a lot happening here. He just moves around, shoots his fireball, and occasionally rotates its head to the other side. I understand why the boss is why it is, but I really wished there was a bit more to it. This may be the best official version of Bloody Tears I've heard in a very long time, if not ever. It's so high energy, it's placed in the right spot, as the banquet hall is not only the halfway point of the run, but also the stage where we enter Dracula's castle proper. Everything in the banquet hall to me just works. It's dangerous, its location I think we don't see that often. The chandeliers is an out there hazard that, I'll be honest, I forget about sometimes. The boss is probably the most unique fight I have ever seen in Castlevania, and again, Bloody Tears. The banquet hall introduces axe armors into the game, and they work exactly how you'd expect, minus the fact they collapse, and I think that is actually kind of a cute detail. We're also introduced to these ghosts that are gone in one hit, who are mainly just here to act as a platforming obstacle. Plus we also meet this weird bird thing who's honestly the most annoying enemy in the game to me, mainly because they just stay out of reach and they can zone you out. Man, I got a game over. I don't really feel like starting the level from the very beginning. Oh, I start from the room I was at when I got the game over. What a great quality of life feature, and this is most likely why this is the only game in the collection to not have a save state. Like I mentioned, the Stained Glass Warrior is one of the most unique bosses I've ever seen in Castlevania. It's a ghoul that not only uses the chapel's stained glass window to have a body, but uses the stained glass to make swords and move around like a ghost who's using stained glass wood. It's an incredibly cool idea. I wish other games could think of something akin to this, or just the level of creativity. After the banquet hall, the basement is just kind of a cooldown. It isn't bad, but it slows down the pace drastically. The golem, who if you told me was Balor, I would believe you, is actually a pretty neat fight. You can use his arms as platforms to help reach the crystal you need to hit. On top of that, he can do an uppercut, he can move his weak point to his head, he can send a ground shockwave, and shoot rocks from his hands. What I will say about the bosses of Revisited specifically minus Medusa and White Dragon, is that while they may not be giving me the greatest challenge on Earth, I have a good amount of fun with them. So aesthetically, this is the clock tower. The music suits the clock tower. It looks like it's the clock tower. I could see some of the enemies being in a clock tower, but man, this doesn't feel like a clock tower to me. And I think I'm okay with that. Like, I'm so used to platforming gears and trying to dodge Medusa heads to the point where that is the clock tower to me. It's so different from what we've had from for years now that it feels foreign in a welcome way. I like the beginning ascent to the actual clock tower and the axe gondolas. It was a nice change of pace. The boss through the clock tower itself is also radically different from what I was expecting. And this is honestly probably one of my biggest gripes about the entire game, because when you go to the clock tower, you're thinking, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fight death. No, death is nowhere in this game. It's Frankenstein, and oh, hey, Dr. Frankenstein is actually here and part of the fight. Holy shit. Again, I think Death should have been in this slot, and I feel he is a missing piece in this game. But Frankenstein is a well-made fight, and I can't take that away from it. But with the monster and his creature slain, we only have one final climb until we engage in the destined showdown to save Selena. Oh yeah. Guys, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know Heart of Fire even originated from Haunted Castle. I seriously thought it was just Julius's theme, but I am so glad it came from here because oh my god, this song is perfect. With the opening notes hitting just right, and Jalen hit a grand slam with this rendition. You probably know how this song and dance goes in Castlevania. Cross the bridge, kill obstacles in your way, maybe watch out for collapsing platforms, etc. But remember, if you fall in a pit here, it doesn't kill you. Now, don't get it twisted. The crossing here is still annoying, but the quality of life changes make it a lot easier to deal with. After you cross the bridge, you enter the throne room and see Selena still in her wedding dress, I guess, and prep for the final showdown with Dracula. Fight! I'm going to be perfectly open and honest with you guys. This is the easiest first phase of a Dracula fight I have ever seen. Quite literally, all he does is teleport and toss knives at you, which, while unique from his typical meteors and fireballs, just feels lackluster. Phase 2 kind of makes up for the lack of a challenge this fight had. He turns into 4 heads with each having a different attack. There's a laser you can duck to dodge, shooting bats that you should just try to whip, moving pillars that you need to try and stay in between, and smacking hands that if you're good enough you can just jump over. All the while being in kind of a cramped space and needing to hit this orb, which I guess is Dracula's soul? I honestly don't know. To make it easier, you can hit the heads and after a bit they will go down for a little bit, but as far as I can tell the attack pattern is completely random, so be careful. Hey, don't be surprised if you get a game over or two here on your first playthrough, because I sure did. But after enough smacks, Dracula is defeated, we save Selena, and we watch the castle crumble, of course, as is tradition, with the final screen being our score and a message from M2 thanking the devs of the original arcade game. And you know, as they say, game recognizes game. And that is Haunted Castle Revisited. I do seriously think that this is the best way to play Castlevania 1. It looks better, it sounds better, it feels better to play, it's more fair, and most importantly, it's more fun. This isn't me knocking on Castlevania 1 or any of its other versions because they all have something going for it. Castlevania 1 is a classic for a reason, and Super Castlevania 4 has been in talk as the best Classicvania for decades for a good reason. However, to me, Haunted Castle Revisited hits all the right notes for me to say with confidence that this is the way to go if you want to enjoy Simon's first adventure. Is this perfect? No, it's probably the shortest Castlevania game and dare I say the easiest Classicvania game. But with the length and difficulty, I would dare say this is the perfect introductory title to the franchise if it wasn't behind the Dominus Collection. Even then, If you do get Dominus and you don't fully vibe with Revisited, then you have 3 highly rated DS games that you can play as well. My only other main issue with this game is a lack of a fight with death, but that's an issue I have with Haunted Castle as a whole, not a Revisited specific issue. Now, with all the praise I just gave it, why is it not my favorite classic styled Castlevania game? Well, that's the answer for next time when there's a Nocturne in the Moonlight. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and maybe even subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. You can even sound off in the comments if you agree with me or have an entirely different take. Until then, be easy.